In this case, there are four unique things that you don't find in other trials. The first one is this is the first time that a murder victim has given the closing arguments, the summation, in the trial of the people who killed them. And yet that is significant because the reason it is happening is because the murder victim is taking so long to bleed out and die. And that is an indication of just how much pain, suffering, misery, torture, torment I have gone through. The second thing is that the murder weapon itself is unusual. You're accustomed to murders being committed by a blunt object, or a gun, or a knife, or poison, or pushing somebody in front of a moving car, or any number of things that we're accustomed to. But we are not accustomed to seeing truly clever and diabolical criminals using the law itself as a murder weapon. These defendants were very clever and diabolical. They used employment at will to kill somebody. And that is not the purpose for employment at will. That is not why employment at will exists. It exists for a different purpose. But these defendants chose to use that as a weapon. The third thing is that in this case, as of now, as I record this, not all of the defendants have been identified. The defendants begin with the backstabber at the Eden Prairie office where I worked. That person has a name. The local HR representative, human resource representative in Eden Prairie office where I worked, that person has a name. But also, there are an unknown number of defendants who are unidentified at the home office of American Musical Supply in New Jersey. Most likely one or more human resource personnel, possibly legal personnel or other management personnel. It is not known because they never revealed themselves to me. And in just a moment, you're going to see how significant that is. And fourth, in the interest of efficiency, and because of the unique aspects of this trial online that I must conduct, because the government of the United States of America will not pursue justice when a homeless man is the victim, I am going to use a precedent as a template. I'm going to use the closing arguments from another trial that is very, very similar to this case, where the defendant was in fact convicted of manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder, and they were sentenced to prison. And I am going to show you, by doing that, by showing the two side by side, that these defendants at American Musical Supply meet the criteria that is necessary for that kind of a conviction. Now, I hope you will forgive me for one thing. I know I'm looking down at my notes quite often, and I don't mean to look away from you like that. If I may just show you this tablet that I am using with my notes. You may notice that it is broken. And because of that, the notes that I have are shifting and changing all the time. I can't control this tablet very well. That wasn't the case 1.5 years ago. Before I was attacked by American Musical Supply, I had a wonderful, beautiful life that I had worked very hard to build meticulously, one piece at a time, one foundation and brick and brick and brick at a time. I had all the tools of all my trades, including computer gear tablet, tablet stand, the things that I need for what I did with my life, in my work, in my professional work, in my hobbies, in all of the interests that I had. All of that has been lost because of American Musical Supply. It is all gone. My computer I cannot use here today because when American Musical Supply threw me into the car to live there 24 hours a day, it took just a matter of a couple months before that broke and it was no longer usable in any meaningful way. This tablet, since I have been living outside for the last month, and I am on my way toward my demise because of that. I don't have much time left in this world because of that. I fell asleep on a stairwell, and even though this was in my bag, because I have so many nightmares that I've talked about in my videos, since American Musical Supply did this to me, when I had not had nightmares previously throughout my entire life. I've had nightmares where I feel like I'm being attacked or stabbed or something of that nature, and I lunge forward, and on 2 occasions I have fallen down the stairs that I'm sleeping on. I wake up as I'm tumbling down the stairs. That's how this tablet was broken. So the fact that I'm just having so much difficulty even presenting this to you is an indicator that what I'm telling you here is truthful and correct. Unfortunately, I have to restart the entire tablet. While it's doing that, let me point out, I am presenting this to you in the environment that I now live in. I now live outside. I don't even have a car to protect me as I sleep. I am exposed at all times to the elements as Minnesota winter descends upon. That is why I am wearing these clothes instead of the very nice wardrobe of suits and sport coats that I had a year and a half ago, before I was attacked by American Musical Supply. Those are all gone, along with all my other possessions. The first thing I want to note here is that when you look at the complete, utter, total devastation of my life, the extermination, systemic, one thing after another, one loss after another, after American Musical Supply attacked me, almost immediately losing the basic fundamental infrastructure that is needed to have a life worth living. Insurance, income, phone, reliable vehicle, nutritious food, hygiene and showers. All of those things were lost almost immediately. The possessions that I had worked to earn for 57 years, those disappeared after that. In any other context other than this, with employment at will being used as a weapon against a homeless person, if one individual caused that kind of devastation to any other individual's life, the perpetrator would be subject to severe criminal and civil action. The reason we're here today without a lawyer speaking to you in a courtroom and instead the victim speaking to you outdoors where he lives is precisely because there's something different when it happens to a homeless person, as I have demonstrated in these videos. I'm not going to talk about that in this summation because we've already spoken about it, but it is important to remember throughout that homeless people are treated differently. It really is an American homeless holocaust. Me being here right now in this manner, presenting this to you, should never have happened. It never should have happened. If I went out to any individual on the face of the earth, 8 billion people, and I caused the utter devastation to their life, and I just dismantled and destroyed every single aspect of everything they've ever done with their entire life, so that it's gone forever and it can never be gotten back, and they are left with nothing but themselves, which is dying, I would be subject to the most severe penalties imaginable, except in this one case where employment at will is used to do it to a homeless person. That is why this is so important that you make a good decision, because this is where you set the precedent. so that when it happens to one of the other 3 to 4 million American citizens, up to 1% of the American population is homeless at any given moment. When it happens to them, the precedent you set here is what is going to help them achieve justice much more easily than what I had to do over the last year and a half, all alone, with no resources, even as I lost everything and gained nothing. So again, your participation here is absolutely crucial. And if you think about it, even serial killers do not cause this much harm to their victims. They can torture people, they can kill people. Let's face it, serial killers can even eat their victims. But they don't take away their bank accounts, they don't take away their intellectual property, they don't take all of the accomplishments that they had accomplished in their life and remove them and disconnect them from the person who accomplished them. They don't erase a person from human history, as American Musical Supply did with me here. What's happening here is one of the worst crimes, if not the worst crime you're ever going to see. So let me start talking about this precedent. It's very important that you understand the precedent so that I can show them side by side. There are plenty of precedents out there. The simple fact is, everyone who's been sent to prison after being convicted for manslaughter, murder, various forms of murder, second degree, first degree murder, or attempted murder, there's a certain checklist, a very small checklist of criteria they must meet to be convicted. This particular precedent was very appropriate because there's so many parallels between what happened to me and how American Musical Supply treated me versus the way the victim was treated here. I'm referring to the trial of police officer Newman Raja. This was in Palm Beach, Florida. He was put on trial for manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder for the killing of a young man, a stranded motorist named Corey Jones. And just briefly to summarize what happened there, Corey Jones was just a fine young man. He was a black man. He was out at night about 3 in the morning and his car became disabled. He called some friends and they came by to help, but they couldn't get his car started. So he seemed to be okay and he was talking to roadside assistance. His friends left. So he's out there at 3 in the morning in the dark and he's talking to roadside assistance and they're finding out where he is to send a tow truck. Newman Raja was a police officer who was a plainclothes police officer driving a white unmarked van, and he was dispatched to go assist his fellow police officers who were dealing with a riot. So he was in motion for that. He saw this car on the side of the road and made a decision to turn around, drive the wrong way up the road, and then park right in front of Corey Jones' car, blocking his car at 3 in the morning in the dark. And according to Newman Raja, what happened was he got out of his van, he identified himself as a police officer, and he asked Corey Jones if he needed help. And according to Raja, after 2 times of saying no, Corey Jones pulled out a gun and pointed at him and started running. And Raja had no choice, because of fear of his own safety, than to shoot Corey Jones, and he ended up killing Corey Jones. That's the story that Newman Raja told. What Raja didn't know was that Corey Jones was in fact speaking on the phone to roadside assistance, and they were recording that call. So Raja did not know that there was a recording of the actual events as they happened. And it didn't take long to figure out that Newman Raja was lying. From that recorded call, we learned what really did happen. Newman Raja boxed Corey Jones in, got out of his van, did not identify himself as a police officer while he's in plain clothes, and he asked, "Are you okay?" And Corey Jones opened the door and said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And Raja asked a second time, "Are you okay?" And Corey Jones said, "Yes, I'm fine." And almost immediately, Raja screamed at the top of his lungs, issued an order to Corey Jones, "Put your hands up! Put your hands in the air!" At 3 in the morning, Not exactly what Corey Jones was expecting. Now, Corey Jones did have a gun with him. He had bought it 3 days earlier for protection. It was legally registered for conceal and carry, but it was sitting on the seat. What happened was Corey had to make a decision. To him, this looked like a carjacker, a threat, an attacker, not a police officer. He wasn't identified as a police officer. Remember what I said just a moment ago about the way that we have not yet identified an unknown number of defendants at American Musical Supply because they did not identify themselves. There's your first similarity. Corey Jones, instead of taking the gun and trying to harm or kill Newman Raja, he ran toward the rear of his car. He tried to run away for his life. And Newman Raja shot this man who was running away 6 times. He shot at him 6 times. He hit him 3 times. 2 of the bullets broke each of Corey Jones' arms, and one of them went through his aorta and his heart and killed him instantly. But Corey Jones had still made it 150 feet away from his car. So Corey Jones is going through his life as a normal, productive citizen with a job, member of his church, beloved by everyone he knew, played in a band like myself, into music. His car breaks down in the middle of the night. He's trying to deal with that respectfully, and if you listen to the call, you will hear that Corey Jones is perfectly calm, perfectly sober, very friendly. He's just trying to take business and get this done. He's just a nice guy. And within 30 seconds of when that van came in there, he was 150 feet away from his car, lying dead. That is how quickly things changed for Corey Jones. And that is how quickly things changed for me. After all those years of homelessness and working my plan to get myself out of homelessness in a position of strength and financial security, with the ultimate goal of being a millionaire by the time I'm 70 years old, so that I don't need Social Security, don't need a 401k. I was working that plan, and it was going according to plan despite the setbacks I'd had that I talk about in my videos. The COVID response that lost me my job briefly, and having my car break down and having to replace the car. But despite those, I was still doing it. Everything was going according to plan, all without a penny of public assistance, nothing. No food stamps, no Social Security, nothing. This was a great American success story in the making, from a good-natured, happy person, and I was ecstatic that it was going well, and I loved my life. And in one instant, the time it takes for a gunshot, American Musical Supply ended all of it, and I would never have it back ever again. From that moment on, Corey Jones died immediately when he was hit in the heart. I have had to die bleeding out for 1.5 years now, and I am only a short number of days from the final end for me. The other notable thing with this precedent with Newman Raja is that after the shootings occurred, after those 6 shots were fired, it was 33 seconds before Raja called 911. And you have to ask the question, what was he doing in those 33 seconds? One thing that's notable is that Corey Jones' gun, which there's no evidence of any kind that Corey Jones ever tried to use the gun, his gun was found behind his car because Newman Raja said that he had the gun in his hand. The prosecution believed that Newman Raja had taken that gun and planted it to make it look like Corey Jones had been a threat. The gun was never fired. When he called 911, Newman Raja gave an abundance of information to the 911 dispatcher, knowing that that call was recorded. And remember, he did not know that there was a phone recording the whole thing the whole time. He wasn't aware of that. He gave a lot of superfluous information that a police officer normally would not give. This is what's called staging. He was deliberately planting information to protect himself and to cover his own ass, to help him get away with murder. And this is exactly what we saw with American Musical Supply. When they fired me for no reason, and without providing a reason, and without talking to me even, without accusing me of doing anything wrong, when they did so, they just suddenly locked the door on me, a 7-year employee in great standing. They just suddenly locked the door to the place that I called home, my only safe place in the world as a homeless man. I was just suddenly locked out. And when I talked to them, they said, "We're putting you on administrative leave." It would be 1 week later when they officially fired me. But in that week, they put me up in a hotel. Now you have to ask the question, why would American Musical Supply did that? You have seen in my videos that back when my car died, after I had worked for them for 5.5 years, my car that I lived in died. And I did everything I could to fix it, but it couldn't be fixed. It was too rusted out. Nobody would lift it up to fix the transmission. It was too dangerous. I had no choice but to tell American Musical Supply that I was homeless. That's when they learned that for all those years I had worked there as one of their very best employees, an exemplary employee in every way, attendance, performance, everything, I had been homeless the whole time. And that's when the hostility began with the home office, not the people I worked with. The people I worked with I got along with great. I loved them. They seemed to love me. They seemed to want me there. This hostility, though, began when they learned that I was homeless, as if there was prejudice and bias there. I had asked them at that time, would you please do me a favor that will help tremendously to recover from this. Rent a car for me. I'll pay for it with my own money. If possible, I can even use my own car insurance because I have a clean driving record. I just am not legally allowed as a homeless person because of this discrimination to rent a car. I can't sign the paperwork for the car. You have to show proof of utility bills and things like that that I don't have. If you will do that, then I can take my savings and I can go out and search and find an even better car than the one I just lost, and then I'll be in a better position and I can just get right back to work. And I'll actually be better off than I was before. And American Musical Supply said, no, we're not going to do that. Because of that, I had to spend $25,000 on a hotel, and in my condition with the intestinal hernia, the feet problems, separated toes, and just at my age, having sat in a car for all those years in that kind of condition, I suddenly had to walk to work 1.5 miles each way for 13 months, including walking through a Minnesota winter. And in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, if you watch the video, The Morally Bankrupt City of Eden Prairie, Minnesota, you will find that it is a very wealthy community. They do not allow poor people or evidence of poor people. Things like buses or thrift shops or pawn shops. They don't really allow that. They don't like anything that even gives the appearance of poor people. And that includes accommodations for pedestrian traffic, because pedestrians are associated with poor people who can't afford a car. So as I walked through that Minnesota winter, all of the snow and ice from the roads for the normal people with cars was dumped onto the sidewalk. 3-4 feet of snow and ice in the sidewalk. So I had to walk in the road itself, which is illegal for one thing, but is incredibly dangerous on slick and icy roads throughout an entire Minnesota winter. In the dark at night, in the busy rush hour of the day. Those are the conditions I had to walk to work, all because American Musical Supply refused to do that one little courtesy for a 5.5-year employee who helped to open that office. So you have to ask the question, why then, 1.5 years later, did they suddenly, as they're getting ready to fire me, put out that huge expense, or, notable expense of about $400 to put me in a hotel for a week? Why did they do that? Why would they do that? They showed no concern for me before. They showed nothing but hostility toward me as a homeless person since they learned I was homeless. And yet, in this one instance, at this one time, they suddenly were willing to spend some money to put me in a hotel. And I never asked for a hotel. I had 7 years experience living in a car. I didn't need a hotel. I didn't expect a hotel. And I had enough savings at that time where I could have gone out and got a hotel myself if I wanted it. So why did they do that? It's called staging. When a company is going to fire someone for discriminatory reasons, they are instructed by their own industry, as I showed you here. Human resource industry trade journals that say, be sure to leave no direct evidence of discrimination. They are not instructed to not discriminate. They are instructed by their own industry trade journals to leave no evidence, no direct evidence of discrimination, to cover your asses. That $400 investment in that hotel there would help them save perhaps millions of dollars in a lawsuit, a discrimination lawsuit. From a business perspective, that is a very good investment. And there is no other way that what they did there makes any rational sense. This is not a company that was known for doing nice things for its employees. From the home office. In our Eden Prairie office, yes, it was wonderful. We got free food every week. We had all kinds of gifts. It was wonderful what we had in Eden Prairie. That I helped to establish the corporate culture there as one of the original employees. But the home office that cast this dark cloud from New Jersey over us and made our lives miserable there, that was a whole nother story. There is no explanation for why they did that except staging. Why did they put me on administrative leave for a week? They already knew what they were going to do. They knew they were going to fire me from the beginning. They did no investigation, as you've seen in these videos. They asked no questions. They didn't speak to me, but they did speak to the backstabber. So they're treating one person differently than they treat the other, which is the dictionary definition of discrimination, treating one person differently than another. So from the very beginning, I was in their sights. I was in their target, their bullseye. And the backstabber wasn't even being looked at. Remember when I would mention what the backstabber was doing, the professional human resource officer in Eden Prairie would say, I'm not going to listen to this, and run away, which is what a child does. For some reason, they didn't want to hear certain things. For some reason, they didn't want to speak to me. They didn't want to learn facts. They didn't want to know things. And they wanted to do odd things they've never done before, like put me up in a hotel for a week when they've already determined that they're going to fire me. Why is that? It's called staging. It's what Newman Raja did after he shot Corey Jones to protect himself from prosecution for murder. They were doing exactly what those human resource trade journals told them to do, to make sure they leave no direct evidence of discrimination. And pretending that they're doing something nice for me that I didn't need and didn't ask for is for their benefit, not for mine. That gives them the 1 week they needed to write a very, very unique separation agreement and severance offer, which would also serve that purpose of covering their ass and preventing a lawsuit against them for discrimination. And remember, the people who have read that separation agreement, the social service worker I told you about is a perfect example of exactly what everyone who's read that agreement has said. As they read through it, they say, this reads like an admission of guilt. It reads like something that is designed by a master craftsman to protect that company from being sued. That's the whole purpose of all those pages and pages and pages in that separation agreement. And sure, they offer me $8,000. That means nothing to me. If I can't ever earn an income again because it's illegal when I'm homeless and all the other problems I have, trying to get a job at my age with age discrimination, with my teeth, with a disabled car, it would never happen again. And they knew that. I had told them repeatedly. They knew they had killed me. They knew they had ended my working career forever. They knew it. that $8,000 was going to mean nothing. It just means a couple more months that I would suffer in absolute misery, and then I would continue losing everything. So you see a lot of staging activity, and you see nothing that does not resemble staging. And later on, you would see the cover-ups. After I started making YouTube videos exposing what they did, because I told them to keep their blood money and their hush money, what they call severance. I told them, you keep it and buy a conscience with it. And I went out and I spoke and I told the world what they did, because the world needs to know when someone does something this evil. And I sacrificed $8,000 to do that. But it's that important, because what they did is inexcusable. And they need to be held accountable for this. As soon as I did that, American Musical Supply starts emailing me and starts trying to cover their tracks, sending me emails that are clearly written by lawyers, but pretending that it's that local HR representative who's sending it to me. They don't even address me the same way they did in every other email previously. Offering me help. We'll help you get an address. An address is a tiny, tiny bit of what I needed. And frankly, there was no way to recover. As I said in my video, A Miracle Too Good to Be True, this job in American Musical Supply, the job itself was the miracle that saved my life 10 years ago. It wasn't getting the address and getting back a phone and a bank account and a post office box and haircut and nutritious food and showers. That was necessary infrastructure for me to get a job. But it was that job that saved my life, and that gave me the opportunity, instead of just working to stay alive in a state of misery until I die at some age, that would allow me to work that plan I had to get out of homelessness in a position of strength, in a home of my choosing, not social services choosing, but my choosing, and with the ultimate goal of being a millionaire by the time I'm age 70, which I was well on my way to doing when these people destroyed it all. When I refused that, they wrote back in legal terms, not in conversational, personal terms, like an HR rep to an employee, but in legal terms, they wrote back a cover your ass message saying, "We understand that you have chosen not to accept any of the help that we offered you," any of the useless help. And as I emphasized in my video propaganda seminar, who accepts help from their murderer? That doesn't make any sense. If there's somebody you cannot trust in this world, it is the person who took action to end and destroy your life maliciously and savagely when you were at your weakest point. Instead of helping you, they took advantage of your situation and hurt you. No, I was not going to accept that help. So American Musical Supply has established a pattern of staging and covering up, covering their asses from the very beginning, from even before they fired me. That one week of time of administrative leave makes no sense. They already knew they were going to terminate me. That week was spent coming up, making sure that they covered their ass, because they knew they were discriminating. And they knew that even though the law allows them to discriminate against homeless people, it is possible with the right attorney, which I never found, but with the right attorney, to set a precedent so that that can no longer happen again. And that is exactly why I put in this much effort with 180 videos and this closing argument. To set a precedent so that if nobody would save my life and nobody would get justice for me, and put these people where they belong, in a prison, so they can't hurt anybody ever again. If they're not going to do that for me, maybe all of the effort I do here and leave behind can do that for homeless people in the future who have done nothing wrong and done everything right and were savagely attacked by bigoted, prejudiced people who were allowed to discriminate. The important questions to ask are, If I had done something so terrible and unacceptable and dangerous that it warranted the immediate termination of a long-term, high-performance employee with no disciplinary history, without even speaking to him first, following a minor and easily resolved conflict with a coworker, then why was this terrible, unacceptable, and dangerous employee offered any severance payment at all, let alone thousands of dollars? Would AMS also offer a severance payment to an employee they were firing for embezzling funds from the company? Why did American Musical Supply offer and pay to briefly house this terrible, unacceptable, dangerous employee in a hotel? Would AMS offer brief housing to an employee they were firing for intentionally setting the office on fire? Why would American Musical Supply suddenly offer help that did not even address the truly insurmountable obstacles I faced after I began publicizing what they had done, when it would clearly make no rational sense for me to accept help from the company that had just mortally attacked me for no reason? Would AMS also offer help to an employee they were firing for physically beating a coworker? So already you can see some similarities here. From the fact that the official did refuse to identify themselves in both cases, the staging and the cover-up beginning immediately when the crime was occurring, and carrying on for as long as was feasible for that individual. For Newman Raja, it was just for a matter of minutes until police arrived. For American Musical Supply, they had the upper hand because they were never talking to me, so I had no idea what they were doing, and they had more leisure to take a week and make sure they planned this out meticulously instead of just firing me on the spot. That $400 investment for the hotel was meant to save them millions, perhaps tens of millions of dollars in a lawsuit, which should have happened, but because I could not find any attorneys who would help a homeless man, it never did happen. Now, in this trial of Newman Raja, the prosecutor who gave the closing statement, Adrian Ellis said, quote, the reason we're here, the death of this man, and she showed a picture of Corey Jones, which was caused by him, and she pointed at the defendant, Newman Raja. The only reason you and I are here today at this proceeding is because of the reckless and malicious actions taken by the defendants. That's the only reason we're here. That's the only reason my YouTube channel with 180 videos outlining all of this exists. It's the only reason I am here in this state instead of being now about 1 year away from being finished with that hard work and being in my own home. The reason we are here considering all of this at all is because of American Musical Supply, because of what they did. Just like the reason that the state of California and Palm Beach County had to invest so much money and time and effort and manpower and paperwork and all the energy that went into that trial, and going forward all of the expense from taxpayers to pay for Newman Raja to live in prison. All of this happened. All of it because of the actions of Newman Raja, not because of what Corey Jones did. Corey Jones did nothing wrong. He was doing nothing wrong, and when he was attacked and he became confused and disoriented at 3 in the morning, not knowing what to do with this attacker, not knowing what to make of them, he made the best decision he could to try to save his life. And that's exactly what I did. So just like Newman Raja was the uncaused cause of all the things that happened, the trial, the imprisonment, the misery and suffering of Corey Jones' family, and of course what happened to Corey himself. Likewise, American Musical Supply is the reason that I lost everything from a 57-year life. Every single thing, down to the smallest piece of paper. My wedding ring, photographs of my family, everything I've accomplished and built and created throughout my entire life. Intellectual property. Everything that was my accomplishment that I was going to leave as a legacy, showing that I ever existed, gone. Everything. Everything. Because of American Musical Supply, not because of anything I did. One reason I was so honest and open in my videos about exactly what I did and said with the backstabber is because, for one thing, I have nothing to be ashamed of. I did nothing wrong. I interacted with this person normally based on how they presented themselves to me, not knowing at the time that they were misrepresenting themselves to me. So I have nothing to be ashamed of. But I went in great detail and I talked about everything I said because I want to make it clear that when this person began attacking me, began using the information I had given her to twist and turn it into something that hurt me so badly that everybody in the workplace could see it, that I was behaving differently than I had for 7 years because of what this person had done to me. So depressed, unlike ever before. If I were capable of suicide, I would have committed suicide, but I have a religious prohibition against it. I cannot commit suicide. By all appearances, this backstabber was trying to push me into suicide. Incredibly vicious. I go and ask her for help, specifically because I've had no family in 30 years and I'm homeless. And she says, sure. And instead, she does the cruelest thing that is possible to do. She shows complete and utter apathy, no concern whatsoever, as if it ain't no big thing what you're going through. The worst thing imaginable. And totally contradicting what she had presented herself to be, throwing me into a state of mind where I have no idea who I'm dealing with anymore. At the very same time that I'm coming to this understanding that her and her clique are most likely, almost certainly, using hard drugs and using them in the workplace, which puts everyone in that workplace at risk. I had spent 30 years studying that. Human resources had not. You simply cannot find anything I did that justifies what American Musical Supply did to me. Firing a 7-year employee in great standing with no disciplinary history, who did nothing wrong, who's perfectly reasonable. Just sit down and talk to me and we can work anything out. Just communicate like grown adults, like professionals, and we can figure it out. That's how I've run my life. They did not do that. If American Musical Supply had not done what they did, if they had not used this as a pretense to attack their homeless employee, I would have lost nothing. We would not be here today. We would be doing something much more fun and productive. I would now be about 1 year away from reaching that ultimate goal of having a home, having the home studio with all of the profit centers that it would give me, and beginning that process of acquiring that $1 million by the age of 70. And I would be loving every minute of it. Singing and dancing my way through it. They took it away from me for nothing. You cannot find anything that I did at this company that justifies this magnitude of holocaust against another human being. It isn't there. It doesn't exist. Remember, at the time when the backstabber filed this harassment claim against me, I had just spent several weeks trying to figure out who I'm even dealing with, since she her behavior was completely different than what she had presented to me in the first place. So if I'm dealing with a liar and someone who's wearing a mask and a fake smile, I have to figure out who I'm dealing with. And I did. And I've shown here that I did that. It took a long time because she was that good at hiding her true self. I was recovering from it. Remember, I had just created the website, the new website with my band's music to share with my fellow employees at a music store. In the 7 years I'd been there, I'd never shared all the music I made with my bands 20 years ago. I was really excited about that. It took a lot of effort. It took my mind off what the backstabber had done to me. I was doing other things, like trying to get back to helping those families who got thrown out of the hotel right as winter began. I was doing the things that you need to do to recover from a traumatic incident like I did dealing with this backstabber. And I was assisted by people I worked with who, even though they didn't know what had me so down, that supervisor who gave me the $550 guitar to try to cheer me up, that is not somebody who wants to lose me as an employee. That's not somebody who wants me to be fired and to disappear. He gave me a $550 guitar to cheer me up that he paid for. This is somebody who wants me to stay. This is somebody who likes me. And I liked him. I liked having him as a supervisor. This all originated with that local HR representative with the fake smile, that backstabber who worked right next to each other and could see each other all day long while I'm in another room. They're both female, and they're both about the same age, and they may have other similarities. And a home office 1,200 miles away who doesn't even know me or the backstabber, but they know on paper that I'm homeless. And their actions throughout my tenure there had shown that they showed hostility toward anybody who's different. Remember, this office, this big office with perhaps 60, 70, as many as 100 people at home and in the office, only a couple of black employees, a couple of Hispanic employees, one Asian employee, I believe. This was not a company that liked anybody who was, quote, different to them. And homeless is very different. Homeless is the only class of U.S. citizen that has no enforceable rights. They have no enforceable constitutional, legal, human rights. On paper they have rights, but they have none. They are the scapegoat for America. They are the group that it is legal to discriminate against, that the American government must discriminate against by law, or else they'll be violating the Civil Rights Act if they don't discriminate against homeless people. I have gone over that in these videos in detail to make this point clear. This is the most vulnerable segment of the American population, and American Musical Supply looked at them like a homeless person on a bench, and they just went up and set that person on fire. And that's a person who had just benefited them and their company and helped them keep their jobs for the last 7 years by doing extraordinary work for them. What these people did is inexcusable in so many ways. Prosecutor Ellis in the Raja trial said, quote, "Raja dug the hole, and he doesn't get to tell you that he's innocent or not guilty because he decided to jump into that hole and then blame Corey," unquote. Corey did nothing. He's sitting in his car. He's going about his life. He has a bad thing happen to him, his car dying in the middle of the night. It throws him off his game, but he's calmly trying to work his way through it. That's exactly what I did. I go to the backstabber for help, and so I can help her. It was meant to be a mutually beneficial thing. Things that friends do, that friendly people do, adults do. She turned out to be a complete and utter fraud. That threw me off my game, and I had to figure out what to make of it and how to respond and how to behave, and that's exactly what I was doing. And I was doing it in a calm manner. And I was doing it at the same time as I was trying to deal with a minor intervention with their likely, almost certain drug use. But that's it. What was this intervention with drug use? The sum total of it was essentially to let them know that I'm aware of what they're doing, to let them know that I am not here to get them in trouble or to go to human resources or to get them fired, but I am here for them if they ever want to get off that, if they want to do something about this problem they have. I'm here for them. And here are some third-party resources that I have no control over. And that's it. That's the sum total of my intervention. Not exactly harassment. Not exactly pushy. And as you heard in the interview with that one recovering drug addict, Angie, she gave me a lot of praise, and I didn't even expect this myself, but she gave me a lot of praise, and she said, that was so good of you to do that, because people who are caught up in this drug world, in this drug subculture, people who don't use drugs, especially someone who's never used drugs like you, they don't show much empathy toward us. And the fact that you would come from outside this drug subculture and show them compassion and say, I'm here to help if you need it, was really unusual, and that means a lot to these people who are on drugs. It means more to them than you'll ever know. And that really touched my heart when she said that to me. I didn't expect that. I was just trying to help. But that's not how the backstabber saw it. The backstabber saw it as an opportunity to stab me in the back. And Human Resources took that and exploited it so that they could stab me in the back for their own purposes. They don't like homeless people. But you do have to at least care enough about a person to do what you can and then step back if it doesn't work, which is exactly what I did. And I don't think I was wrong to do that.
No.
This is a human life we're talking about.
Exactly.
What matters more than that?
Exactly. Everybody deserves a chance to live.
Yes, yes.
You know, and you're a good person for being willing to try. And being somebody who's not from that world, being willing to help somebody, that's fantastic, because we don't get people like that in that world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't get outsiders that are being like, hey, dude, let me help you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because of the stigma. And so it means a lot to have somebody an ally in that, you know what I mean? An outsider ally. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people who are who are recovering addicts who are allies, but to have that outsider ally is huge for a lot of people.
So you've got Corey Jones, a good man who's doing nothing wrong, and when he gets put in an intense situation, he has to quickly figure out how to handle it, and he does. He decides not to try to shoot this stranger. Even though he had a gun, he decides to run for his life. What did I do? When I gave the backstabber that tablet message as the first part of my gift, the gift that I had explicitly asked her permission to give her, and she granted me that permission. I asked her permission. I didn't just come up and give her a gift one day. I asked her permission to give her this gift. I showed nothing but respect for her. She said yes. The gift took a long time because it was a big, complicated gift. That's the beauty of the gift. That's what made the gift so wonderful. That's why I was so excited to give it to her. She was getting more than she ever thought she was going to get. And hopefully she would like it. And if she doesn't, well, I'm sorry. I gave you the wrong color socks this year. But she didn't see it that way. She saw everything as an attempt to just manipulate and control and to hurt and to harm and to throw gasoline on the fire and bang the hornet's nest and just stir up trouble and conflict everywhere where I wasn't looking for anything of the kind. That's what Corey Jones was doing. And when her behavior became hostile toward me and became malicious toward me and became dangerous toward me, where it looked like she was trying to push me as far as suicide and into deep depression, I did the right thing to work my way out of it while still doing my job competently. That's essentially what Corey Jones did. Remember, Newman Rajau is the reason that all of the bad things happened in that case. American Musical Supply and this backstabber are the reason all of this happened. They dug the hole and they jumped into it. And after they jumped into the hole that they dug, what did they do? They all blamed me. The backstabber files a harassment claim against me. Whatever that claim said, since American Musical Supply will not reveal the contents of this, I have no idea what she's accused me of. She could have accused me of any number of horrific crimes for all I know. I have no way to know. And since the company was irresponsible enough to hire a clique into the same department, a clique of 3 people, who apparently are all, by my estimation, into drugs, she could have, quote, witnesses for anything she comes up with. And it's hard enough to defend yourself if they have witnesses, even if it's a drug den, but when you don't even know what the charges are against you and they have, quote, witnesses, how in the world can I defend myself against that? I can't. Also, with the propaganda seminar video, remember when they were doing all the cover-ups, American Musical Supply, sending me these emails trying to cover their asses. And then they blamed the victim when I didn't accept their, quote, help. They blamed the victim in legalese, no less. It was so obvious what they were doing. It's just reprehensible what these people have done. Next, take a look at the pain and suffering. Corey Jones was shot in the aorta. He might have been hit in his arms first, so he might have felt some pain for a few seconds, but he was only alive for about 30 seconds after Numan Raja arrived. He didn't suffer long. And that's a good thing for him, because this never should have happened to him. He did not suffer long. What I've gone through for a year and a half of losing every single thing I did, everything that was my life of 57 years, more than half a century. I have shown in videos on this channel about human torture. It meets the internationally accepted definition of human torture. When they talk about human torture in a genocide or in a war zone or just some diabolical, maniacal strongman takes over a country, when they talk about human torture as an atrocity, as a crime against humanity, they define what it is. What American Musical Supply put me into, knowing that this is the only place I could end up, meets the internationally accepted definition of human torture. That's one area where my story diverges from Corey Jones. He died right away, and he didn't lose everything. When he died, his family didn't find out that his bank account was gone. The books that he had spent years researching and writing were now gone. The manuscripts were gone. His life's work had been vaporized and just didn't exist anymore. If Corey had a child, for example, his child wasn't just gone. His family didn't disappear like American Musical Supply exterminated my entire bloodline. Corey Jones died. And that's a horrible, tragic thing, but that's all that happened there. What American Musical Supply did to me was on par with a genocide, with a Holocaust, an extermination. And they knew there could be no other outcome because I told them repeatedly, whether they want to listen or not, since they're so fond of saying, I'm not going to listen to this. I told them in front of witnesses. They have no excuse. Next, Prosecutor Ellis wants to introduce the victim. I don't want to talk too much about that because, well, for one thing, I'm talking about myself, but I have a video toward the end of my channel called May God Have Mercy on American Musical Supply. That was my attempt to just give a summary, brief, light overview of who I am, the kind of person I am, and what I did with my life. Corey Jones was a really nice guy. He's going to church, he's working a responsible job for the government, he's loved by everybody, he's playing in a band, loves music like I do. He's just an ordinary guy, and by all accounts, he was just a really nice, good guy. This shouldn't have happened to him. He didn't deserve it. He did nothing to deserve it. I don't want to sit here and tell people I'm a nice guy. That's for other people to determine. But I will say that I've tried to be a nice person, a good person my whole life. And I've tried to improve who I am my whole life. Daily improvement in who I am. I've tried to do things that help other people and that are exciting for me personally. And I've tried to find a balance to where my life is an exercise in pleasing myself and helping the world. Things like trying to come up, I don't know how to cure cancer. That is not my field of expertise. I have a lot of scientific background, but that is not my expertise. But I do have expertise in project management. So I was trying to apply that to help the government endorse a plan to cure cancer, because there is none out there. Using principles of aviation safety to help improve safety and comfort and prosperity for everyone everywhere, because aviation safety has been so successful. These are the things I did with my life. Making music. When I had my home, I would dance in my underwear in my home. I would go and sit down and watch my fish that I had kept alive for generations. And I would mull over things like the way that running a fish tank is so similar to running a government. You can't allow all your fish to die. You can't allow them to get sick. They need to be prosperous, but you have to work with the resources available. I'm always looking at the world, learning something new every day, and loving every minute of it. When I drive my car, I don't have the stereo blaring. I'm singing with joy in my heart. When I'm out amongst people I don't even know, I make them laugh, telling jokes. This is who I am. Beyond that, you'll have to judge who I am, because I'm not here to toot a horn. I'm just here to tell you who I am. I didn't deserve what these people did to me. It should never have happened. It should never have been allowed to happen. Employment at will should never have been an option for them to wield as a deadly weapon. But in this case it was, and they availed themselves of that weapon, which is reprehensible. Next, let's look at the charges. Prosecutor Ellis said in the Newman Raja trial, quote, "The defendant is charged with manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder." Unquote. To prove manslaughter, she must show that from the moment Raja arrived at the scene, everything he did was reckless. That's how she phrased it. From the moment Raja arrived, everything he did was reckless. And it was. He didn't identify himself as a police officer. He drove the wrong way down the road. He abandoned his fellow police officers who he was supposed to be going to help with a riot. And he just turned around instead and decided to accost some random person in a car. Drives the wrong way down the road, boxes him in, scares the daylights out of Corey Jones at 3 in the morning, looking like a carjacker, and then starts barking and issuing orders. Put your hands up. If a total stranger tells you to do that at 3 in the morning, what are you going to do? Everything he did was reckless. From the moment American Musical's play entered this picture, from the moment I contacted that backstabber, she was reckless. She was reckless with my life. She lied to me. I would like to give you this gift. Now, she doesn't know it, but the gift is going to be an extraordinary gift. It's meant to give her something back. I framed it as she's helping me by letting me give a gift to someone when I have no family to give a gift to. And that is true. I want to do that. I love giving gifts. What she didn't know was that the gift she was going to get was going to be extraordinary. We were both going to win. It was going to be a wonderful thing. I've done this with many people. But I didn't know I was dealing with a backstabber. Everything she did was reckless. Not speaking to me, not talking to me, not clarifying things with me, lying, running to human resources instead of talking to me. If you don't understand something I gave in a message, just come over. We're friendly. We're friends, right? Every time I come and see you, you turn 90 degrees and face me and smile. And all body language experts say that is a sign of someone who is welcomed and liked, not a sign of somebody you want nothing to do with or who is harassing you. So just come over and ask me. That's what any person would do with an acquaintance that they get along with well. But she didn't do that. In every instance, she did whatever it was that would cause the maximum pain, suffering, and harm to me. I didn't do that to her. Human resources, from the moment they learned about this, what did they do? They were completely reckless. They wouldn't tell me what was in this harassment complaint. Going back to the Magna Carta with habeas corpus, you have a right to know what you're accused of. They refuse to grant me that courtesy. And yet, they demand that I defend myself against it in writing, no less. Why would they do that? They called it fact-finding. This local HR representative called that, quote, fact-finding. We're just fact-finding right now. Well, if that's the case, then when did the investigation begin? Because after this fact-finding, they immediately put me on administrative leave and fired me. So where was the investigation in there? Where was it? Utterly reckless and irresponsible. They knew the trouble I had, the unique problems of being homeless. I had sat in that HR representative's office with my manager when they had the complaint earlier in 2024 about my smell. And I sat there and I explained to them how I spent the whole Christmas season just trying to get a shower. And there was no way to get a shower. If I wanted to get a tampon, I just had to go to the men's room because Tim Waltz and the Minnesota government made sure that there were tampons in men's room. But if I want a shower as a homeless person, that's something they don't provide. And I had to go through all that effort to try to get a shower, and after all that effort and gas money and driving around town, I still didn't have a shower. But the reason for it is because the showers in our building were under renovation and they went on longer than they told us it was going to go. That's why I smelled right then. They told me about it. I was perfectly reasonable. I thanked them for letting me know because I don't want to be a burden to other people. And I fixed the problem. And it was over, done with. So she learned right then and there that I'm perfectly reasonable to work with if you just sit down and talk to me like a reasonable person. And that even with something as embarrassing as you smell a complaint, I'll accept, hey, you're right, I do smell. I'm not going to try to get out of this. I wish I didn't, but I do. Thank you for telling me. I'll fix the problem. And I did. And I went back and followed up with them to make sure that I had solved the problem, and they said I had. But in the process, she learned how hard it was for me just to get a shower. The whole process of trying to get a shower, that ports over to everything else. Trying to get your car fixed, trying to function without a phone, trying to function without a home, trying to function as you get older and lose your teeth because the state of Minnesota provides no hygiene facilities for homeless people. So even as you're working a professional job, your teeth are degenerating as if you were a meth addict, which doesn't make any sense until you understand that the state of Minnesota does nothing to help homeless people. And I couldn't start brushing my teeth again until I got that job at American Musical Supply. But those 2 years before that, when I couldn't brush my teeth, is what started this process, which just, bam, hit me all at once, so that I couldn't get it fixed in time. And I was going to clearly have to have them all pulled and start over. So she knew perfectly well the situation I was in. She knew it. She knew the extraordinary battle I was fighting, and yet she was totally reckless with it. So to prove manslaughter in the Numan Raja trial, they had to show that he was reckless the whole time. Everything American Musical Supply did was reckless. Lying, deceiving, keeping me in the dark, doing everything in the darkness and the shadows and nothing out in the open, not even revealing what the charges were against me from this harassment complaint. Utterly ignoring what I said about how hard it was to get a shower, and instead taking that information and figuring out that I am in a hopeless situation as a homeless person. And therefore, if I lose my job, I'm going to lose everything and I'm going to lose my life. And using that against me as a means of ensuring that that happens to me. These people had an abundance of alternatives they could have chosen that were non-catastrophic to me, and they didn't even pursue those. There was no reason this person should have lost his job. In every aspect, American Musical Supply was reckless with my life, but I wasn't with them. When it comes to that fact-finding, as she called it, one of my backgrounds is in science, and there's this kind of humorous axiom in science that says, if you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything. If you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything. In other words, the basis of junk science. Remember, one of the things I've done, and I'm one of the few people in the world who has devoted his life to this, fighting against junk science. This is a principle of junk science. You can make a scientific study say anything you want it to, regardless of the truth, regardless of reality, if you torture the data long enough. You can make it say anything. You just have to finesse this and cherry pick that, only go to the media with this, make sure your peer review is done by a friend. You just have to play the game, and you can create a, quote, scientific study that says anything you want. This causes cancer. I can give you a study that will prove that this causes cancer. Or I can give you a scientific study that proves that this cures cancer. If you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything. What were they doing when they asked me to give a written response when they wouldn't even specify the charge that I'm responding to? They were gathering data, not facts, but data. Because if you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything. The more information and data they got from me, the more they could use against me. If they had used this for an actual investigation, then there would have been no problem. It would have been obvious that the backstabber was at fault, that I had done nothing wrong, or if I did do something wrong, it was just an honest mistake, not a big deal. Sit down with me and talk to me about it like a grown adult, and we'll fix it. No big deal. They are the ones who took it to this level where they had to fire such an extraordinary employee and absolutely destroy his life, knowing that that was the only possible outcome. Remember, the local HR person, when I tried to explain certain things, she would say on 2 occasions, she says, "I'm not going to listen to this." She did that once in her office, and she did it when she came to the hotel to fire me with my manager there. And she didn't, at that time, she didn't just say, "I'm not going to listen to this." She said, "I'm not going to listen to this," and she got up and ran away. As a grown adult and a professional, it was embarrassing to even see that. I never thought I would see that in a professional career, let alone twice. From the person who believes they have the qualifications to decide whether I get to keep my employment, keep my means of support, keep my life. From someone like that. Absolutely reckless. What was one of the first things that came out of my mouth when this harassment claim was filed against me? Remember, this was after the backstabber. When I gave the backstabber the gift, she immediately, I asked her permission to give her a gift right before Christmas. She said yes. It took me more than 2 months to make that gift, and then I waited an additional 2 weeks because I didn't want it to be associated with Valentine's Day. There was nothing romantic about this. I had no interest in her. So I waited a few weeks or some time behind Valentine's Day, so it wouldn't be associated with that. I hand her the gift, and she immediately, she had all those days and days and weeks, she could have said, "I want nothing to do with this. I've thought it over. I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't think I'm the right person. I don't want anything." She didn't do that. She waited and waited and waited and waited and waited weeks until I gave her that gift that she gave me permission to give her, and she immediately ran to her supervisor with it and complained about something. Don't know what. He comes over to me and he tells me, when I ask him what is it that she's complaining about exactly, he refused to tell me. So once again, I'm left completely in the dark. Absolutely irresponsible, unprofessional, reckless. And then he says, she's not going to go to HR with this. And I'm thinking, why would she go to HR with it? There's nothing there to go to HR with. I didn't do anything wrong. But yet, the next day I came into work, 2 days later, she had gone to HR. So they lied. One lie after another, one misrepresentation after another, one reckless action after another. When I get called into HR and I learn about this complaint that I don't even know what it is, one of the first things out of my mouth was, quote, to the human resource officer there, This is murder. Now, if you're a professional, if you're a police officer and someone comes in and says, I need to talk to you about a murder, what do? Do you say, I don't want to hear this, I don't want to listen to this? If you're a police officer. If you're anybody, if you're a member of the media, if you're anybody, if you're a total stranger and someone comes over and says, this is murder, don't you at least kind of want to know what it's about? Is this just a crazy person blurting things out, or has a murder occurred, or am I in danger? Is my family in danger? That's a pretty serious thing to say. This is murder. And I didn't say that for no reason. It was not for nothing. I said it because this was murder. I knew by that time what I was dealing with this backstabber. And I knew from the long history of dealing with corporate American Musicals play in New Jersey how ruthless and hateful these people are. How bitter and mean-spirited they are. Divide and conquer tactics against their own employees. The horrible things they've done to us. Not liking people who are different. Getting rid of people. Watching the older employees like myself just disappear. Like the Schwartzes would disappear from Nazi Germany, never to be seen again, with no one knowing where they ever went. I knew what was coming. I knew what was going on here. And I had studied business and human resources for years, and I had called for the regulation of human resources for years for this very reason. I knew what was going on. So I said, this is murder. A responsible person would have said, okay, you just said something very serious. Sit down. You're going to explain to me what you just said to me, and we're going to talk about this, and I'm going to document it. She didn't do that. I was talking about murder because I knew that this backstabber knew what she was doing to a person who sleeps in their car was a deadly threat. Human Resources and American Musicals play absolutely knew that the idea of me losing my job was a risk to my life, a serious risk to my life. It was murder. I said the truth. This is murder. I couldn't have said it more simply. 3 words. They didn't take it seriously. That is the definition of recklessness. Human Resources came to conclusions before they had all the information. Remember, when this first happened and I told Human Resources, this girl is setting me up. She is setting me up. And what was the response? Immediately, that local human resource person. She's not setting you up. The problem is, I hadn't even submitted my written response to this unknown charge yet. So they hadn't even, quote, gathered the facts yet. And remember, gathering facts is supposed to happen before an investigation. None of that had happened. So how could she, with authority, say she's not setting you up? It sounds to me like she had made a determination already. She already had her answer before any of this began. She's not setting you up. This HR person didn't even know until a day before what had happened between me and the backstabber over the last 2-3 months. How did she know all this? This was a preconceived bias in favor of the backstabber and against me. They demonstrated it over and over and over again. Human Resources and American Musical Supply. Anybody with a vapor of common sense would recognize that ending a homeless worker's livelihood is going to be absolutely catastrophic for that person. Instead, they obliterate a 57-year life in the most savage, brutal, barbaric, cruel attack that I personally have seen since the European Holocaust. Let's look at the state of mind. In the trial of Newman Raja, Prosecutor Ellis said, quote, "The time of day matters. Please don't disregard that," unquote. She emphasized to the jury, please do not disregard this. She made a special point about it. She highlighted it. The time of day matters. Why? Because it wasn't 3 in the afternoon with traffic and the sun shining and people everywhere. It was 3 in the morning in the dark, scary times. As a rule, the people who are out at 3 a.m. probably not the people you generally want to get too close to too easily, just to be safe. The time of day matters. When Newman Raja did this strange thing with an unmarked van driving the wrong way down the road, blocking Corey Jones, getting out, not identifying himself as a police officer, by all appearances being a carjacker, and then starts barking orders at Corey Jones, put your hands up, what do you think Corey Jones' state of mind was? There is no possible way he could evaluate this situation properly because of Newman Raja, not because of Corey. It's the same thing that happened with me. The backstabber lied, misrepresented herself. She was, I couldn't grasp who this person was because she wasn't a square dealer. She wasn't dealing fairly with me. And I had to try to figure out who and what am I dealing with. So my state of mind was changed by that, just like Corey Jones' state of mind was changed by this happening at 3 in the morning. The fact that I'm homeless, the fact that I have no family, the fact that it is Christmas, my 30-some-odd Christmas without a family, which hurts. It's hard. I want to celebrate Christmas with my family, but it's 3 decades without them. And I go to her for help with that, and she turns it into a weapon, an opportunity to cause me pain. And I have to take that burden on top of everything else. I'm homeless. I'm living in a car that I just spent 13 months walking to work to obtain, and it turns out to be a lemon, a disabled lemon with a bad transmission. And the whole time, someone who I cared about, this backstabber, I learned that they are apparently using illicit drugs in the workplace and possibly putting their lives at risk. I've got all this stuff going on. It affects your state of mind. When you consider all of that and you look at what I did and what I said, you show me anybody who could be more reasonable and professional and calm throughout all of this. I didn't lose my calmness until these people started attacking me. But that's the difference between anger and terror. Because once they started attacking me, I knew what it was. It was a death threat. Because I know the consequences of what they were doing to a homeless person. And so did they. So anytime if I did show anger after this, and I did, it's because that's not anger, that's raw terror. That is what Corey Jones showed when he ran away from his car, leaving his gun behind. It's raw terror of losing your life. Because these people were attacking me in a manner that was going to take my life, and I knew it. There's nothing unusual about that. That's exactly how a human being, a well-formed, stable, conscious human being should function. You fight or flight. You feel terror. You feel that. And it makes it difficult for you to think properly and to make good decisions in the short term. Human resources should know that, right? But yet they threw all of their wrath on me. Nothing for the backstabber who initiated all of this problem, all of this conflict. Why is that? Why is that? The backstabber's a beautiful young girl, beautiful face, big smile, puppy dog eyes. Look at me, losing my teeth, 57 years old, homeless, and they're perhaps their best employee. A company that likes young white people working there, but doesn't really like, based on the statistics, just based on the statistics of who works there, doesn't seem to appreciate black people working there or Hispanics or Asians, even though probably half our business was dealing with the DJ scene, hip-hop, rap music. There is a pattern here to be seen. They sided with the young, white, pretty girl with puppy dog eyes, and they went after the old homeless guy who had done everything right. They sided with the young girl who did everything wrong. The pattern is quite clear. Corey Jones did the right thing. In fact, he did the right thing by running away. He could have pulled out his gun. He had a legal right to carry that gun, and he could have shot at Newman Raja, who he thought was a carjacker. But he didn't. He didn't even try to hurt his attacker. He ran. He tried to defuse the situation by getting away. What did I do with the backstabber when I figured out that the backstabber was a threat? That message I gave her on that tablet with the gift What did it say? It said, I am not going to initiate contact with you again. And the reason, precisely, specifically, is because I do not want you to feel uncomfortable in your workplace. That is not someone who harasses other people. That is somebody who is trying to be respectful of them. But it's somebody who's trying very hard to back away, to get away from the threat. It's the equivalent of Corey Jones running away from the threat that he had faced. It's the equivalent. Again, when I was looking at the drug issue with work, and it's worth pointing out that even though it wasn't on the 180 videos on the website, you, the jury, have been able to see the video of one member of the Backstabbers clique out at the far end of the parking lot on a Saturday morning, the most farthest distance possible from the building, with very few people there because we were the only business there, and you get to see what that individual was doing inside his car. That is not something I revealed on the website. You've gotten to see that. So you know the accuracy of my suspicions about drug use in the workplace with these people. But what other research did I do? I went to the CDC and the U.S. Surgeon General's office, among others. Who did American Musical Supply go to form their COVID response to a pandemic, a deadly pandemic? The U.S. Surgeon General's office and the CDC. Why am I wrong for going to the exact same sources for advice that American Musical Supply went to? When they do it, it's okay. When I do it, all of a sudden I have to be fired. Somebody who wants to harass someone at work wouldn't even go to that effort, would they? The evidence is so clear that this was a personal attack, not a business decision. I was trying to help other people, not to hurt them. In the Newman Raja trial, Prosecutor Ellis said, quote, "The very person who was sworn to protect him was the very person he needed protection from," unquote. Corey Jones, the person who was the biggest threat to him, was the police officer who was supposed to protect him. Who in that workplace is supposed to protect me from a coworker who is out gunning to destroy my life, destroy my career, and to kill me? Who in that workplace is most responsible for putting a stop to that? Human resources. Who in that workplace did the most to join the backstabber, pile that attack against me with a force multiplier of the power of that department to make sure that the job got done and that I did lose everything and die? It was human resources. Exactly what happened in the Newman Raja case. The parallels are right there. And remember, these parallels, as you watch these parallels, these are the criteria that sent a man to prison for 25 years.
I was going to try to back it in here.
You wanted to park there on the street here?
I can do that.
Thank you for your understanding during that brief recess. These gentlemen needed to set up a food truck next to me. What I was talking about was the fact that if I had done anything that was wrong or excessive or inappropriate or what have you, it was to such a minor degree that it was a matter of just sitting down and talking to me. At worst, writing me up. I can't imagine a single thing I did that would be worthy of that, but just sit down and talk to me and we'd figure it out. But instead, there's this utter nuclear cataclysm, destruction of my entire life. That is not a coincidence, and that goes far beyond mere recklessness and negligence. It shows intent, because I had made it clear to American Musical Supply that this would be the outcome if I lost my job. There was nothing I did that justified losing my job. Keep in mind, when you're looking for a legitimate business purpose for terminating me, I was one of their very best employees, documented in several places. Very high performance reviews. Essentially, for what it's worth, perfect attendance for 7 years. I had worked overtime most weeks, maybe as little as 15 minutes, maybe a couple hours, for 7 years. I received raises whenever they were available. Longevity. I helped to open the office when we first opened before any other businesses were in that large building. I helped to establish what that corporate culture would be. And what did I say that corporate culture was in Eden Prairie? The best I've ever seen. The friendliest, the most love and warmth between all the workers in all departments of any place I've ever worked, the best communication, the most good humor, helpfulness, care, concern. I'm not saying I established that. I'm saying I'm one of the many people who started, about 8 or 10 of us who started the place, and we formed that kind of a culture there. I had great reviews from supervisors and manager and coach. When I would go in for coaching every month, toward the end there, he had nothing to even tell me. He would just give me gifts, give me an amplifier, give me a box of $100 worth of strings. I had endless requests from customers throughout my 7 years there for a survey system so they could leave good review for me, or they would ask to speak to the supervisor so that they could give me praise. American Musical Supply never showed any concern whatsoever in 7 years for setting up a system of receiving praise or criticism of their employees like that. But I had customers all the time who said, "You went so far above and beyond the call of duty. You helped me so much when the people at your competitors did not. I want your bosses to know about it." I can't count how many times on a call people would say, "I hope they're listening to your calls because I want to make this clear. Give this man a raise." This is who they terminated. Because of my age and the fact that I started in music very, very young, I had a breadth and a depth in music, music history, music theory, various instruments, history of music throughout the world, MIDI, electronic music, traditional instruments. I had probably a broader, not necessarily depth in one particular place except drums and such, but I had better knowledge than probably anyone in that place. There were people who were better than me at this, that, and the other thing, but as far as the big picture, I probably brought the most to the table there. And that was a factor of my age and my absolute passion for music since I was 3 years old. I won awards there and contests. I'm not even a salesperson, and yet almost every month I would win the sales contest for customer service. That was a bonus of $100, $150 extra dollars a month. I won the sales contest and was given a free trip to Maryland to visit the PRS Guitar Factory. So I am not an employee who just sits around and does nothing. I'm not an employee you want to get rid of easily. No competent business person would want to get rid of an employee like this easily. I did all the extra effort off the clock. I would stay late when everyone else left. When it was time to go, everyone vacated. Like opening the door to a spaceship and the vacuum sucks everything out, and I remain. And I go around and make sure everything's unplugged, especially around Christmas when they had all those Christmas lights there, and I would unplug them. Make sure the coffee pot's not on. Just make sure the place is safe and secure, that the doors are locked. The door right next to Human Resources that says, "Do not use, emergency only," that one was often propped open. And anyone could walk in and steal not only the company's $250,000 worth of gear in there, but all of our personal instruments that we had in our cubes. I'm the one who stayed and did that. If a delivery was made during the day and it was left at the door because they couldn't get in the building, when all my colleagues left, they would just leave and look at those boxes sitting there. I would see the boxes, see that they're for us, and I would go reopen the office and put the box in the cube of the person it belonged to while all those other people walked past it, possibly so it could get stolen overnight. I, granted, because I was homeless and because I was in the parking lot a lot in my car, would pick up the garbage that was dropped there by these housed people who just dumped their trash. The very first video I made on my channel has a video of me not just cleaning up a bunch of food that was dumped in the parking lot by someone in that building, but by the very people, the backstabbers' friends, who initiated this attack against me. Those are the kinds of people American Musical Supply kept, who dumped their food out there like children. The guy who picked it up when he didn't have to is the one they got rid of. I'm the one who would stay a bit after training. Every week we had vendors, Gibson, Fender, Mackie, Presonus, Yamaha. We would have vendors come in and train us on their products. If anyone was going to stay late and talk to them to give them ideas for marketing their products, or new ideas or information that our customers had given that would be useful to their research and development, that was me. With my background in business, I was always looking for opportunities for anything, R&D, marketing, what have you, not just for us, but for our vendors. And when they came in, I would present that to them. My colleagues did not, to any extent. I handed out candy to everybody at my own expense, periodically. It was meant to be around the holidays, kind of blew up into something more, but the purpose of that originally was to help boost morale, because New Jersey management had cast such a dark shadow over the place with some of their policies that people just needed to pick me up. I did that. I'm not aware of anyone else who regularly went through and gave everyone in the office, including other departments, including the human resource person, who did this to me, giving them a tasty mint. I made frequent good suggestions to management. Don't forget, I have a strong business background. I have written and lectured, published on things like teamwork, revenue management, all kinds of things. I have a background in computer science in college. Our computer systems were totally antiquated. The suggestions I had regarding our software systems were extremely valuable. If I had walked in that door as a consultant and said the exact same things, they could have paid me hundreds of thousands of dollars for that. American Musical Supply didn't even listen. They just looked at me and said, "You're a customer service agent. Shut up," was essentially the way I was treated when I came to them with those suggestions. They had that kind of value sitting in that chair, but all they saw was a customer service agent, someone at the bottom. Just like they see a homeless person and they think, this is someone at the bottom of society. We don't want them there. That's the way this place functioned in New Jersey, not the people I worked with who loved me and who I loved, or at least who liked me. AMS just balked at everything. I put up with endless indignities throughout all of this. I put up with the indignity of being forced to treat customers poorly, trying to somehow defend the indefensible, such as their 2-day shipping, which everyone knew was not going to happen in 2 days. It's a lie. And I had to defend that with customers while trying to respect those customers as I want to, and trying to uphold this lie that American Musical Supply told for all those years. Lying to customers about not seeing their information from a competing music store, Zounds, which is owned by the same company as American Musical Supply. We could sit there and just stare at their personal information from Zounds, their account information, and we had to lie to tell the customers, we can't see it, that's a totally different company. I had to put up with that indignity. If I was not building this way out of homelessness in a position of strength and this was just another job, I would have left the company a long time ago because of those. Those were very, very difficult for me. And I put up with them for 7 years. They were very, very difficult. They went against all my morals and ethics. But I put up with it. And instead, I, as gently as possible, kept bringing it up, trying to change it from within, trying to do something positive with it. Whatever they think I did that was so horrific, they had to not only fire me, one of their best employees, but completely, utterly destroy my life and end my life. What did I do that even comes close to lying to customers for all these years? What did I do? American Musical Supply has yet to answer that question at all. They have said nothing. This was a personal attack. This was not a business decision. Just like in the Newman Raja trial, the implication of Newman Raja's behavior and everything that transpired there is that Raja was just trying to throw his weight around. He saw a car, he went to investigate, and as soon as he saw that the driver was black, the hostility began. There may have been a history of potential racism there. If Corey Jones was white, there might very well have been a very different outcome to that encounter. If I had not been homeless, there would have been a very different outcome if I had done the exact same thing with that backstabber. And anybody with common sense and life experience can see that when they see the facts that I have shown you in all of these videos on my channel. Depriving me of sales commissions, forcing me to do sales as, quote, overflow for the sales department, which they deliberately understaff so that it will always overflow to us. And when I do sales, I don't get commissions, but if I set up the entire sale, I spend a whole weekend setting up a sale, and the person calls back Monday morning, an hour before I come into work to place the order, a salesperson can just hit submit and do nothing else, and they get full credit and commissions for that sale that I spent the whole weekend setting up. I put up with that indignity for 7 years. I would not have done that if it wasn't absolutely necessary for me to work my way out of homelessness while trying to change this from within. What did I do that even compares to the abominations that American Musical Supply was guilty of that would justify firing your best employee with no history of disciplinary action, without even speaking to him, without accusing him of doing anything wrong, without providing a reason why? This was a personal attack. As surely as someone who goes up to a homeless person sleeping on a park bench and they urinate on that person, or they set them on fire. These defendants are guilty of attempted murder. And when I am gone, which will be soon, murder. Malicious dereliction of duty and abdication of responsibility. In the Raja trial, Prosecutor Ellis pointed out that Raja should never have been there. He should never have been there. He was told to drive to help his fellow police officers who were involved in a riot. He had the riot gear in that van. That was his job. He abdicated that responsibility to some other police officer. We don't even know if he told them he was not going to show up. And he decided to come and check out this car instead. Dereliction of duty. One of his many bad decisions. The New Jersey Home Office, Human Resources, never should have been involved in this. This was a local issue in our office 1,200 miles away in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, where everybody in that office knows each other and sees each other every day. They know each other's personalities and characters. They know the managers who know their employees. This is where it should have been done with. That local HR representative is guilty of dereliction of duty. They abdicated their responsibility to take care of this to the New Jersey Home Office, which is known as the dark cloud full of bitterness and hate that attacks people. She knew what the outcome would have to be coming from that organization in New Jersey because they had never behaved differently. When I was meeting with her and my manager, when she put me on suspension for that week, put me up in the hotel, I asked her point blank, right in front of him, why did this even go to New Jersey? Because it shouldn't. That's her purpose. That's the reason she has a job, is to do that. But she didn't do it. She collected a paycheck, but she didn't do that job and deal with this complaint and do the investigation. She sent it to New Jersey instead. Why is she even employed there if that's all she does? I asked her point blank, why did it go to New Jersey? What was her answer? And I quote, "This is above my pay grade," unquote. And she said it snidely. What was that? When I gave that tablet message as part of the gift to the backstabber, and I was very, very gently as I possibly could, letting her know that I knew about the drug use. I started out by saying, I am not going to HR with this. I am not here to get you in trouble. I'm not your enemy. I'm your friend. And I said the reason is because this is above HR's pay grade. That was a message I gave to the backstabber. It was a personal message between me and her. It was not for other people to see. It was not me trying to attack human resources. It was stating a fact. I have 30 years experience studying the drug subculture, the drug epidemic, how big pharmacy was involved in it, everything. Down to the nitty-gritty of spending the last 10 years filming people all around me engaging in drug deals with adults, with professionals, lawyers and doctors, with high school kids, filming these, learning the patterns, learning how this works. That's what I had. Human resources had nothing, unless, of course, they themselves are using drugs, in which case they would have some experience in the drug culture. I've never used drugs in my life, and yet I know more about that than perhaps some of the people who work at the Drug Enforcement Agency do. That's how much experience I have. I did not lie. I did not insult HR when I said it's above their pay grade. It was. They had never shown any interest. They had shown nothing but tolerance for drugs. And if you're talking about marijuana, you can let it go. But when you're talking about a drug that's totally illegal and much more dangerous and could cause serious harm to people in that office, it's another story. The backstabber immediately turned around and showed that to Human Resources, that private message I gave her. She betrayed my trust, which is what backstabbers do, right? She did it so that Human Resources would see a message where I appeared to be attacking them, because she knew that they're going to perceive that as an attack against them, and their wrath is going to come back upon me when their ego is hurt. And they're going to forget that she even exists, even though she's the one who gave them that message, not me. I never said to Human Resources, it's above your pay grade. I said to her, it's above their pay grade. She took that message to them, knowing as a manipulator that that would focus their wrath when they get hurt feelings against me. I never meant to hurt their feelings. That's why I never said it to Human Resources. Yet, when I asked why this went to New Jersey, when this harassment claim was filed, what does she say? It's above my pay grade. And she says it in a snotty manner. That was a bruised ego. That was someone who had been hurt. But she wasn't focusing her attention on the person who had hurt her, which was the backstabber. She focused it on me. This was personal. This was not business. She sent it to Human Resources there because she knew that there's no what conceivable way she could justify firing me. It's not even possible. I did nothing wrong. The backstabber did everything wrong. And there was just abundance of evidence, overabundance of evidence. But if she sends it to New Jersey is known for doing unethical things, for doing cruel and inhumane things. Let them destroy this guy's life instead, and I can walk around with plausible deniability. She is still just as guilty as they are. And that's the proof right there. Her answer was the proof right there in front of my manager. That snide remark from her. The way she did that demonstrates malice and bitterness, and that's a personal problem. She needs to go see a psychologist about that. She does not need to attack one of her employees about that. The refusal to choose non-catastrophic alternatives. One thing that Prosecutor Ellis emphasized strongly and repeatedly in her closing arguments against Nouman Raja was the fact that Nouman Raja had abundant opportunities to do something different, which if he had taken even one of those alternate opportunities, there would not have been a catastrophic outcome. For example, he could have driven to where he was supposed to be. Instead of dereliction of duty and abandoning his post, he could have gone where he was told to go, which was to help those police officers with the riot, and just left Corey alone. He could have approached Corey in a manner that did not look like a crazy carjacker, driving the wrong way down the road at 3 in the morning and cutting him off, putting a white unmarked van right in front of his car, just feet away from Corey Jones. He could have identified himself as a police officer, but he didn't. He could have refrained from yelling and screaming, "Put your hands up, put your hands in the air," to Corey Jones, who interprets that as a total stranger who is not a police officer barking out those orders. He could have chosen not to shoot at somebody who is running away and therefore poses no threat. But he chose not to. And this is the key to where this crosses the border from manslaughter over into the territory of first-degree murder or attempted first-degree murder. Because it means there was willful malice here. Willful malice. Likewise, in American Musical Supply, I have a video where I displayed almost a dozen alternatives just that I could think of off the top of my head. And they were very reasonable. They were appropriate. They were proportional to the severity of this complaint, which was a pretty minor complaint. If there had been something like physical attack or stalking or sexual harassment or letting the air out of her tires, if there had been something that was meaningful, that's a whole different universe of response that the company needs to do. But not this. Not this. Not with somebody who was taking his time and taking measured steps to do the right thing, checking with third-party sources to make sure, getting advice, following company policies, keeping his manager informed. A different universe. They had an abundance of alternatives, and every single one of those alternatives was non-catastrophic. It would not have destroyed my entire life and ultimately killed me. And they chose none of them. Yet they were appropriate for the situation, and the one option they did choose, which was catastrophic and deadly, was the one option that was completely, utterly inappropriate for the situation. It was the definition, a textbook, college textbook definition of overkill. When a serial killer kills somebody or someone is murdered and they're stabbed, you can stab them once in the heart and see that they're bleeding and run away, and they will die. They will bleed out. Or you can continue to stab them 72 times if you want. That's called overkill. It's way beyond what is necessary to get the job done. It shows hatred, bitterness, prejudice, malice, anger, fury. It shows the pit of hell. What American Musical Supply did to me was that. It was not these other calm, casual alternatives that all could have been solved by a few people sitting at a table and just talking for a few minutes. And it's all over, and we're back to work. And they retained one of their very best employees. That right there shows you that American Musical Supply was not thinking of their business at the time. What they did was damaging to their business. They lost one of their best employees, and if it had been someone else, I apologize for the mosquitoes and the bees out here. If it had been one of my coworkers, they, since they're allowed to work, they're allowed to apply for a job legally, they could have gone to one of our competitors and taken all their experience and helped a competitor, which hurts American Musical Supply. The owner of American Musical Supply, who has, to my knowledge, never said a word about this, if he even knows about it. He was missing in action the entire 7 years I worked there. No one ever saw him, if he existed. If I owned the company, I would want to know that my human resource department was doing something like this. That would concern me greatly if I valued the existence of my company, because that kind of behavior poses an existential threat to my company. That's how serious the behavior of human resources at American Musical Supply was. They could have chosen a non-catastrophic alternative, and they didn't. The option they chose makes no rational sense based on what actually happened. Everything about it demonstrates malice and intention to hurt another human being. Nothing to do with business. And one thing that Prosecutor Ellis emphasized perhaps more than any other thing throughout the trial of Newman Raja and in the closing arguments was this, quote, "When you make wrong decisions, I don't care who you are, doctor, lawyer, police officer, whatever. When you make wrong decisions, you don't get a pass." Unquote. And she emphasized this over and over. In fact, she even said, I'm going to keep harping on this to the jury. I'm going to keep harping on this because it's that important. You don't get a pass because of your job title. In other words, nobody gets away with murder. Nobody is above the law. If a police officer is not above the law, and they cannot take their power and authority to go out and kill an innocent person and get away with it. If a doctor cannot have a patient come into surgery or into their office and leave in a body bag because of total negligence and reckless behavior on the part of the doctor, if that doctor is going to be prosecuted for what they have done, then they are not above the law. If you go to a lawyer and they fail to defend you properly, and you, an innocent person, are sentenced to the death penalty, your blood is on their hands. Nobody is above the law. Nobody gets a free pass based on their job title. And that includes a politician all the way up to the President of the United States. For some reason, American Musical Supply seems to think that human resources is an exception to that. And in a way, they are. Because Human Resources is the only organization in America that has the power to fundamentally attack another person where it hurts the most. Their ability to earn an income and feed themselves and feed their families, pay their bills, maintain a responsible life as a grown adult. They have the full power to take that away from people because of employment at will. But that's not why employment at will was created. It wasn't to give random people in human resources the ability to just see somebody they don't like, and even though everyone in the company wants that person to stay there, and even though the company itself benefits tremendously by that person being there, this person in human resources doesn't like something about them. The color of their skin, their religion. They look like somebody who bullied them when they were in 5th grade in another state or in another country. Remember what I've showed repeatedly on my channel. All the studies clearly show that of the jobs that tend to attract psychopaths, people who get a personal thrill out of hurting and harming other people, of the career paths that attract those people, number 1 is corporate leaders, including human resources. There's a reason why I put so much about psychopathy on the website. And when I went through the Hare checklist, I am not qualified to diagnose these people. I am not trying to diagnose them. But I'm making the point clear that they need to be diagnosed because they fit almost all the boxes, all the check boxes on the psychopathy checklist, while my other coworkers, my other 60, 70, 80 coworkers, didn't check any of the boxes. Is it just a coincidence that the people who were involved in this, human resources, the local human resource person, the backstabber, that those people checked the boxes? Is it a coincidence? Or does it sound more like a personal attack from a genre of person with personality disorders that are known for wanting to personally attack, dominate, and control, hurt, and destroy other people? Psychopaths. You do not get a free pass because you're human resources. Employment at will allows you to fire someone for no reason. It allows you to fire them, frankly, because of the color of their skin, because of their religion. As long as they can't prove it, you can circumvent the Civil Rights Act. You can get past employment discrimination laws. You can render the Civil Rights Act null and void using employment at will. But it is not a license to kill. If you use any weapon, if I use this drumstick to bash you in the head to kill you, this was just a drumstick. It was making music that made people smile and dance and cheer. I can turn this into a deadly weapon. They cannot turn employment at will into a deadly weapon, and they knew what they were doing. By using employment at will to fire somebody who was not fireable because he had done nothing wrong and he had done everything right, they knew they were throwing me into this situation where my life would be destroyed and my life would end. American Musical Supply is guilty of attempted murder, and when I'm gone, murder. It's as simple as that. No free pass. Human Resources, unlike any other institution out there, has no regulation from government. There is no third-party oversight to check their work, as it were. There is no ombudsman or third party appeals process if they are not unionized. There is no one you can go to if some random Yahoo in some human resource department somewhere singles you out for some reason, and all of a sudden you're obliterated and nobody in the company even knows why or what happened, and the company suffers from losing you, but they got what they wanted. There's nothing to stop that. But if they do that with the intent of causing you that kind of harm, they need to pay the price in a court of law for what they did. And if they kill you, they need to pay the price for what they've done, because they turned the law into a weapon. And it doesn't matter if you're Newman Rajah with a gun, or if you're someone with a drumstick or a knife or a bomb or poison. It doesn't matter what the weapon is. The weapon killed. That's what matters. I've talked about the staging that Newman Rajah did immediately, as soon as he shot Corey Jones, before he called 911, before he notified authorities that there had been a police-involved shooting. He took 33 seconds to do something. And somehow, Corey Jones' gun, which he didn't use against Rajah, ended up on the ground between the car and his body 150 feet away. And there were other things going on. Rajah lied right away. He lied repeatedly. And we have become so accustomed to lies in our society, we've become so accustomed to this so-called post-truth culture that we forget just how serious it is when a person lies. This was a music store. I was a musician. I worked with musicians. One of the things that got me into studying all the things I've talked about here that make me an expert on the drug epidemic and corporate crime and things like this, human resources and the need to regulate human resources. One of the things that got me into that, way back in 1988, I believe, was a Metallica album called And Justice for All. And in there was a song that began where it said, "When a man lies, he murders some part of the world." It is words like that that changed the course of my life from focusing just on science or something and moving off into directions where I'm trying to help people by challenging corporate corruption and evil. People who break the law, people who hurt other people. That very phrase from a band, music, led me in that direction. And yet, they call themselves a music store. When a man lies, he murders some part of the world. Let's see what American Musical Supply has lied about. And this is only part of it, obviously. I've already talked about when the backstabber misrepresented herself. That's a lie. When you misrepresent yourself to someone else, you're lying to them. She lied about wanting this gift. Clearly. I asked her permission. She gave me permission. I spent all those weeks and weeks, a couple months working on the gift, and then I waited a few more weeks so it wasn't associated with Valentine's Day. In all those days, 60, 70 days, she never said, "I've reconsidered this, I've thought this over, I just don't think I'm the right person, I hope you don't feel bad, but I want this to work for you as much as me, maybe you should give this to someone else." She never did that. She just waited and 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 waited until I gave her the gift, and bam, instantly she goes to her supervisor. Her supervisor lied. He lied by omission when I asked him point blank, "What does she say that I even did? I want to know what I'm accused of." And he refused to tell me. That's a lie by omission, just as surely as Newman Rajah lied about his identity when he failed to, and he refused to identify himself as a police officer. Her supervisor said she is not going to HR with this, and yet the next day she goes to HR with it. That was a lie. I've talked about things, everything from American Musical Supply having us lie to customers about us being able to see their accounts at another music store, supposedly a competitor, as far as the customers know, about the 2-day shipping lie, about all those lies, the deception involved in bringing you in to do sales when you're not going to get commissions and you're going to be exploited in that manner. What about when Human Resources published in their own corporate policies the phrase, "We are serious about the health and safety of our employees and keeping our workers working at this company"? That's a quote. "We are serious about the health and safety of our workers." I was very healthy when I worked there. From the instant they fired me for no reason, my health and everything has totally declined because I no longer have nutrition, I no longer have hygiene, I no longer have adequate sleep, I no longer have anything, and I'm losing everything that I acquired throughout my entire life and built. The terror and the trauma that I have acquired from that is the opposite of good health, and I am soon going to die from this. That isn't health. What they said was a lie. We care about our workers' health and safety. That is a lie. This demonstrates that it is a lie. The second part says, we are serious about and keeping our workers working at American Musical Supply. They did absolutely nothing to try to keep me working there. There was no conceivable reason why I should be terminated. Any problem that did exist, if you could even find one, if you could somehow find something that I did wrong or a problem, it was so minor, so much a matter of personal interpretation that you just sit down with me at a table, we talk about it, we come to terms with something, and we're done, and we go on working. And instead, they explode this nuclear bomb on my life and on my family. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense outside the context of a personal attack, and a vicious one, savage one at that. The fact that co-workers who just recently started with the company and they prove to be unreliable, they don't show up to work, they do a bad job, other people like me have to cover for them because they're doing a poor job. And the company can't, the supervisors can't even get those people fired when they need to get them out of there for the sake of the company. And yet, me, a 7-year employee with no disciplinary history who did nothing wrong and everything right, just like that, gets fired. It doesn't make sense. These are lies. These are deceptions. These are misrepresentations of the truth and of their true selves. They sold on the slogan that we're musicians. They're out there all over the internet telling musicians, shop with us because we're musicians. In other words, we know what you're going through. We can empathize with you. But the backstabber wasn't a musician. And I have no evidence that I'm aware of. I could be wrong in this, I don't know. But I have no evidence that the human resource person in Eden Prairie was a musician, or played any instrument at all, or knew anything about an instrument, knew a bass clef from a treble clef. I have no evidence of this. I was a musician since I was 3 years old. Lies. This company just lies, 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 lies through and through. Telling me that they want a written response because they're fact-finding when they're not. They're not. They are gathering data because, again, if you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything. The more information I give them, the more they have that they can twist and turn and contort and use as a pretense to do something evil. Because the more information you have, the more people have to look at and convolute and confuse the matter. If they had just told me what I'm accused of, I could have just addressed that only in a much smaller response, focused like a laser beam on that. But they refused to do it. Why? Why did they refuse to tell me what it is I'm supposed to even respond to? Perhaps to get a longer response, which is more data, and the more data you have, the easier it is to torture it until it will confess to anything. This is where junk science comes from. There is nothing legitimate whatsoever about the way American Musical Supply conducted itself throughout this entire fiasco. And then, of course, we have the use of deadly force. Prosecutor Ellis in the Newman Raja trial said, quote, "The law does not allow you to invoke the use of deadly force and then turn around and say, see, deadly force was justified," unquote. When Raja pulled the gun out and shot Corey Jones as he ran away, essentially shooting him in the back. I don't know exactly how he was shot, but he was shot while he's running away. He did not pose an immediate, imminent threat to Raja's life. That violates the rules of using deadly force. There was no law that allowed Raja to use deadly force in that instance. There was no code, there was no police policy that allowed him to use deadly force in that case. Even in common law, when it comes down to the rules of engagement among civilians with each other, in a civilized society, nothing there justified the use of deadly force. And yet, Raja used deadly force anyway. 6 shots. 6 shots at a man who's running away. A black man who's running away. American Musical Supply did not have authorization to use deadly force. I had told them that if I lost my job, I will die. I went through this 10 years ago, and the circumstances that caused this problem have only gotten worse over those 10 years. The Minnesota government has gotten worse and more dangerous. The attacks against homeless people have gotten worse and more dangerous. I will lose everything and die if I lose my job. I told them that repeatedly. They knew that. That's deadly force, and yet they did it anyway. Even among common law, there was no justification in a civilized society for them to come after me with that brutal and savage of an attack, that barbaric of an attack, based on what actually happened between me and that backstabber, which was almost nothing. Remember, in the year that that backstabber was there, the sum total time I spent with any kind of significant communication with that person was 9 minutes. And all but 20 seconds, she would turn 90 degrees and face me and smile, puppy dog eyes. Laugh, smile. In the last 20 seconds, I was putting something over her shoulder anyway. It wouldn't make sense for her to turn and face me. Something's wrong here, folks. Something doesn't add up. These people wanted me gone. Why would they want me gone? It sure wasn't because of my performance. It sure wasn't because my coworkers wanted me gone. What made me different? My age, which is covered by the Civil Rights Act. This is one way around that. But, more important, when did the hostility begin? From corporate AMS. The day they learned that I was homeless, which is not covered by the Civil Rights Act. They had no right to use deadly force. In the Newman Raja trial, as with probably every other trial for murder, attempted murder out there, the prosecutors and the lawyers and even the judges rarely say the word murder or kill. They rarely say it. They usually frame it in some phrase such as, took his life. His life was taken away from him. She was deprived of her life. Her life was taken from her. It doesn't talk about the bodily functions of dying and ceasing to pump blood and have blood flow to the brain. It talks about taking their life from them. I'm waiting for the bodily functions to die. That's what's coming up very, very soon for me as I live in these conditions of beginning Minnesota winter. Over the last year and a half, though, my life was taken from me. Everything I had, everything I'd accomplished, everything I'd built, everything I had done, everything I had acquired, everything I had inherited, everything I'd built, everything that was me and my life and my family bloodline is already gone. I can never, ever, ever get it back. It's gone. They took my life. And in this murder trial that sent this person to prison for 25 years, they referred to his murder as taking his life. They took my life. Do the math. It's the same thing. I would suggest to you that even the village idiot who completely lacks common sense is still capable of recognizing the obvious fact that if you take away the livelihood of a homeless person who has no family, who lives in a disabled car, that the outcome is going to be really, really bad for that person. I would suggest to you that outside of a lobotomy or dementia or something that has scraped away part of your brain, you tell me, members of the jury, can you think of a person who could in any way be regarded as mentally competent, who would not comprehend the obvious fact, a homeless person, no family, no means to support, living inside a disabled car, no access to showers if they don't have a job, nutritious food, none of that. Anybody who is competent is going to figure out that if that person loses their job, they are in a horrible situation at best, and a deadly situation at worst. American Musical Supply knew what they were doing. They knew exactly what they were doing. There is no excuse. They do not get a pass. They knew what they were doing. I told them repeatedly. I'm going to end here by giving a quote, since I can't call in expert witnesses in a mock trial of this manner. Todd Grande, he's a YouTuber, popular YouTuber, psychologist, who comments on various people and circumstances out there from the perspective of a psychologist. And as he says, I'm not here to make an official diagnosis of anything. I'm just giving you my opinion based on my understanding as an expert in the field of psychology. He looked at the Newman Raja trial, and here's what he had to say about it. And I quote, "I think that Newman put Corey in an impossible situation where any move that Corey made would have led to his death. If Corey surrendered to a carjacker, that could end in death. If Corey resisted a police officer, death could occur there as well. This was a no-win situation, which was 100% caused by Newman Raja." Unquote. 100% caused by the defendant. Corey Jones wasn't responsible for even 1% of that. None of it. It was entirely caused by the defendant. I have said throughout my videos, for a year and a half before I even learned about that quote from Todd Grande, I have said repeatedly, this backstabber, when I said that she was setting me up, when Human Resources said, she's not setting you up, when they didn't even know what the circumstances were, preconceived bias, when I said she's setting me up, that is exactly what I was talking about. That's exactly what I told them. She's creating a no-win situation where no matter what I do, I will lose. Either I have to just step back and never talk to her again, and then I have not fulfilled my promise to her to give her that gift. I am a man of integrity. If I promise someone I want to do something, I want to do it to the best of my ability. I'm not perfect like anyone else, but I want to. And especially when I put in that many dozens of hours on this project that was meant to benefit her as a young person, to help her have a better life going forward. So I'm not winning there if I did all that work and I have this gift ready for her and I just don't give it to her because she's gone crazy and it's best if I just back off. So I did it in the lightest manner I could, the most non-threatening manner I possibly could. I even said, here's your gift. I'm not initiating contact with you again. You're welcome to contact me if you want, but I'm not going to do it with you because I don't want you to be uncomfortable in your workplace. That's not someone who's harassing their coworker. That's the polar opposite. When I learned about the drug use, I did not come out and say, hey, I know all about this. Maybe if you give me $100 a week, I might stay quiet about it. I didn't blackmail them or extort them. I didn't say, hey, I'm going to go to HR with this, I'm going to get you guys fired. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I didn't even say, hey, you're doing something that I think is absolutely abhorrent. I'm going to give you the high pressure to stop doing these drugs. I'm going to lay down the law. I'm going to do everything I can to make you feel horrible and get you off these drugs, whether you want it or not. I didn't do that. I very lightly told them, very lightly, I'm aware of what's going on. I know what's going on. I am a friend who is here to help you if you want help with this problem. If you do. You can come to me. I'm someone you can trust here. Here's some third-party resources that I have no control over, nothing to do with, that could help you. And with that, my intervention is done. That's it. That's it. She put me in a no-win situation by attacking my dignity, taking the trust I put in her when I told her that I had no family for 30 years. 3 decades of Christmases where I don't wake up with gifts from my family and gifts that I gave to my family. And each and every year that gets harder and harder and harder for me. And I honored her by coming to her, asking her to help me with that and to help me get through this tough period, while at the same time I'm going to give her something that will benefit her for the rest of her life. A win-win situation. What does she do? She turns it into a no-win situation by her actions, misrepresenting herself, lying, treating me like absolute garbage, turning that around to twist the knife, to take the pain that I told her I was feeling and to make it as intense as possible, even to the point of suicide, if I were capable of suicide, which I am not. She's doing exactly what was described here. Human resources. We're not even going to speak to you. We're not even going to tell you what you're accused of. We are going to create a no-win situation. There is no way, Paul, that you are going to win here, because we hold all the cards, we loaded the dice, us and the backstabber, we have all the power and control, and we are the ones who wants to attack and hurt another person, and you're just sitting there not wanting to hurt anybody. You don't stand a chance of surviving this. We're going to win, you're going to lose. It was a no-win situation for me, and that came from this backstabber, that local HR representative, and those people at American Musical Supply in New Jersey. And it's as simple as that. Now, to summarize all of this, let's take a look at my situation versus Corey Jones' situation side by side. When we look at what the defendants did in the Newman Rasha trial versus American Musical Supply, you're going to see nothing but similarities. To begin with, look at the victim. We were both working professionals, both well-regarded, both religious, which implies morality. We were both musicians, and at the time we were attacked, we were both in disabled cars. Corey was age 31, I was age 56, is the biggest difference. We also both had in common an aspect that was subject to prejudice and bias and bigotry and discrimination. Corey was black, I am homeless. As far as victim culpability and all of this goes, there was none. Corey did everything right and he did nothing wrong. He did not deserve what happened to him. Similarly, in my case, I did everything right to the best of my ability. I did nothing wrong. I have demonstrated that I went and researched what I did. I took measured steps. I took time. I kept my manager informed. I checked company policies, etc. In terms of the outcome, in both cases, the outcome was catastrophic to the victim. Corey was subject to betrayal, but he didn't know it. He did not know Newman Rasha was a police officer. I was subjected to betrayal by the people I loved and trusted the most, the people I spent my time with in the place I considered my safe place. These are the last people in the world I would have expected to attack me. Corey Jones was subjected to terror briefly. His future was stolen. He ultimately died, and that was described in a court of law as someone, quote, took his life, unquote. With me, the terror has been long-term, 19 months and counting. My future was stolen. My death is still pending. It won't be long. And these people took my life. But also, in my case, my entire life's work, more than half a century, has been completely obliterated, all of it. I have had a total loss of infrastructure, bank accounts in good standing, insurance in good standing, professional relationships, having a phone, uninterrupted sleep, all of that infrastructure is gone. Total loss of possessions and property, including intellectual property. Total financial loss. I have been subjected to trauma, torture, and unlike Corey, whose family came out of this intact but deeply hurt, my family, the concept of my family, was annihilated. All memories of my family are now gone and in the hands of total strangers. In both of our cases, the defendants knew or reasonably should have known that their actions would lead to that catastrophic outcome. In both of our cases, the defendants functioned in an official capacity and they failed to identify themselves. In both of our cases, the defendants engaged in reckless and unprofessional behavior. In both of our cases, the defendants lied frequently and repeatedly. In both of our cases, the defendants staged and covered up after the fact what they had done. In both of our cases, the defendants used unauthorized use of deadly force, totally unnecessary, unjustified. In both of our cases, the defendants engaged in overkill. In both of our cases, the defendants refused to pursue more appropriate and non-catastrophic alternatives that they had available to them. In Numan Raja's case, he had an abundance of alternatives. If he had chosen even one of them, Corey Jones would still be alive. In my case, American Musical Supply had abundant alternatives, any of which were more appropriate to the circumstances and would be non-catastrophic. They chose to take the one catastrophic alternative that was the least relevant to the actual situation. In both of our cases, discrimination was involved. In the Numan Raja trial, it was demonstrated that most likely some form of bigotry or prejudice was involved with Corey being black. In my case, of course, the hostility with the Home Office in New Jersey began when they found out I was homeless, and I had asked them for that simple bit of help to save me $25,000 getting a hotel, and they refused. In both of our cases, the defendants were expecting to get a pass due to their job title. Numan Raja was a police officer, so he thought he could get away with murder. The defendants in my case, human resources, co-worker, they thought they could get away with using employment at will as a deadly weapon. In both of our cases, the victim was shot in the back, you might say. Corey, literally, myself, backstabbed. And we were hit as we were attempting to avoid or back away from conflict. Remember, I'd given the backstabber that message that said, I'm not going to initiate contact with you again. That is me trying to avoid conflict. And she immediately went on the attack. She was wrong. In both of our cases, the defendants created a no-win situation for the victim. In Corey's case, the pain and suffering that he experienced was minimal. It was serious and intense, but it was very quick. It was over within 30 seconds. In my case, the pain and suffering is maximal. It has gone on and on and on every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year since they did this, and it still hasn't stopped. Nightmares, daymares, nothing but pain and suffering. Nothing but. My whole life was replaced by pain and suffering on the Ides of March 2024 by American Musical Supply. As far as the duration of that pain and suffering, again, Corey Jones was dead within 30 seconds of Numan Raja's arrival. For me, it has been 19 months and counting. As far as the verdict goes, Numan Raja was found guilty on all counts. It remains to be seen what will happen with American Musical Supply based on this information I've provided on this website. And finally, Numan Raja was sentenced for what he had done to Corey Jones to 25 years in prison. As you can see, what happened to me in the big picture was far, far worse than what happened to Corey Jones. And it remains to be seen what will happen to the people at American Musical Supply who did this to me. Now, having said this, I want to point out that in the Numan Raja trial, I just specified from the closing arguments. In a closing argument, you are specifying the most relevant details and referring back to evidence that was shown during the trial, or in my case, on the website, on the YouTube channel. And you are summarizing to show that all the criteria for a conviction have been met. This was the criteria that they used to convict Numan Raja. And he was, in fact, convicted of both counts, manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder. Numan Raja was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He tried to appeal it. No go. When he shot Corey Jones as he ran away, that one shot is what killed him. It went through his heart, his aorta. He died almost instantly. A horrible, terrible death. He died in a state of terror, being chased by this crazed lunatic who hadn't identified himself as a police officer. It shouldn't have happened. But Corey Jones died almost instantly. He did not suffer much. And he left behind everything he had. His life savings, any accomplishments he had were still attached to his name. Unlike where I've been deprived of even the books that I wrote no longer have any proof that I'm the one who wrote them anymore because all the original manuscripts are gone. He did not have that taken from him. He was murdered. It's terrible, it's tragic, but it was over quickly for him. He did not suffer much. And the man who killed him got 25 years in prison. American Musical Supply, knowing what was coming because I had sat down and talked to them about it. And common sense just tells you. Remember, even the town idiot can figure this out. You can't be regarded as mentally competent and not understand. It's like what goes up must come down. A homeless person with no family, no means of support, and a disabled car, if they lose their source of income, they are in a unusually desperate situation. It's just, nobody could not know that. And in my case, I had made it clear just how desperate the situation was, all the way to causing my death, because that's what happened 10 years ago. There was a precedent for it. There was a pattern established. American Musical Supply, like with Corey Jones, a man who did nothing wrong and did everything right, I did nothing wrong and did everything right. It's because of my good work, in part, because of my extraordinary work for this company for 7 years, that those people have their jobs. That we weren't run out of town by the competition. In part, not all because of me, obviously, great people I worked with, but my contribution helped to ensure that they still have their jobs, and therefore, their homes, their beds, their children, their family memories, their cars, their savings. I did that for them. And what did they do to me? They took everything from me. Everything. Every family photograph, every sight of my parents, my wife, my wedding ring, everything. 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 I mean, I can list out hundreds of things if you want, but everything. There's nothing left. I'm walking around carrying a bag filled with $2 blankets and a pair of drumsticks. a year and a half ago, before American Musical Supply attacked me, I, as a homeless person, was going out helping other people who were in need because I had an abundance. Maybe not an abundance, but I had enough money to be able to help other people, and I did. I felt it was a privilege to be able to do so. No one has been helped by me since that day, since the Ides of March 2024, because of American Musical Supply. I've lost absolutely everything. I have had to bleed out. It's like being shot, and it takes a year and a half for the blood to drain from you and for you to slowly grow cold and die until your spirit leaves your body. This doesn't happen in a normal murder, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. In a normal murder, someone is attacked, they're hurt in some manner with some weapon, a gun, a knife, pushed in front of a car, poisoned, or using employment at will as a weapon. It doesn't matter what the weapon is. They are attacked in a manner that will hurt them in a devastating manner, and it takes some amount of time for them to actually die. It might be instantly, it might be a few minutes, it might be an hour, it might be in a coma for 6 weeks or 6 months. But nobody goes through the kind of pain and suffering and endless loss and trauma and terror and torture that I've gone through, except people who have been through a Holocaust, which is the only other example in this world of where one individual and their family bloodline is systematically, over time, deprived of one thing after another, after another, after another, until it is all gone, and then they die. That's what American Musical Supply did to me. Newman Raja got 25 years in prison for killing Corey Jones just like that. What is going to happen to the people who killed me at American Musical Supply? Because I have demonstrated here, just like American Musical Supply engaged in overkill for a man who did nothing wrong and everything right, they came at my life with a nuclear weapon, a hydrogen bomb. Just like what they did to me can be seen nothing more than overkill, like someone who's out killing someone and just beating them after they're dead, just killing them, stabbing, stabbing, stabbing long after they're dead. That's what American Musical Supply did to me. And yet, because of that, the abundance of evidence I have showing, demonstrating that that is exactly what they did to me is greater than most of these murder trials have in evidence. 180 some odd videos on my YouTube channel. Now granted, American Musical Supply got rid of a lot of the evidence. One reason they locked the doors on me is so that I could never take anything off that computer in terms of evidence. They just wiped the computer clean after they locked me out of the building. That evidence is gone. The Eden Prairie, Minnesota Police Department refused to do their job and investigate this when I asked them to. Watch my film, my video, The Morally Bankrupt City of Eden Prairie, Minnesota. I tried immediately to deal with this in a responsible manner from the standpoint of a law being broken. But already, American Musical Supply was already deleting hard drives, staging, covering their asses. The amount of evidence against them is so overwhelming. For you, the jury, to find them not guilty should free every person who is in prison right now for attempted murder or murder. Because I can promise you, they were convicted on far less evidence than what I've just presented you here today. Again, I thank you for your time and your service. I thank you for paying attention to this, for telling others about it, for going to the Justice Department and demanding that American Musical Supply and this backstabber be held accountable for what they have done. Deliberate destruction of another human being's life, knowing that it would end in their death. Thanks to all of you.
Now, what the defendant is charged with here is manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder, both with a firearm. manslaughter is different from murder. Because in manslaughter, what we have to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt is that this defendant, when he pulled up, from the time he pulled up, his behavior, his conduct was reckless. And that everything he did, he knew, or he reasonably should have known, that it would have led to the death of Corey Jones. And that's exactly what it did. Is there an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to him when he fires those last 3 shots? And what we do know from the evidence, absolutely not. Because Corey Jones was already in the tree, he was already in the tree line. He was already in the tree line. And the reason that you know and you can trust your gut beyond a reasonable doubt, because the last 3 shots are so deliberate and so methodical and so controlled. Like I said earlier, it's as though he's just at the range practicing, or he's hunting, you know, he's lining up his sight. Boom. 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 Now, if none of those 3 hit him, then guess what? Because if he sustained all 3 shots in the first set of 3, those last 3, attempted first-degree murder. Because at that point, his state of mind has changed. There is no imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. Corey's gone. And he cannot get a pass for the last 3 shots. And that is attempted first-degree murder all day, every day. And the manslaughter, I told you guys, is separate. You got to evaluate his conduct. You got to evaluate every single thing that he did from the time he looks over to his left and he sees Corey Jones's vehicle. And ladies and gentlemen, please, again, I implore you, just because he was a police officer at the time, he does not get a pass for what he did to Corey Jones. He is guilty of manslaughter while armed. And he has to be held accountable for what he did, the actions that he took that night, the life that he took that night. Count 2. Guilty of attempted first-degree murder as charged. You'll see that there's a lesser of attempted second. The reason why it's attempted first, because as I explained before, those last 3, depending on what expert you believe, and like I said, if you believe Dr. Nelson, that's absolutely fine. But those last 3, he doesn't get a pass. Remember, the judge said you cannot base your verdict on sympathy. Not, well, you know, I mean, he's an officer, you know, he probably just did the best he could. That's not standard. No, that's not the standard. He has to be held accountable for what he did. Not that he did the best he could. Had he done the best he could, Corey Jones would still be here.